Methamphetamine, cocaine, amphetamine, all of these drugs work on many different neurotransmitters in your brain. The predominant one they affect is dopamine, but it turns out that methamphetamine does many other things as well, and the way that it affects your dopamine is in many different ways. One, it causes all the dopamine that are sitting in these little vesicles, those little packages in your neurons that are full with dopamine, just ready for if you are looking at something and it stands out, your brain fires a little bit of dopamine. If something rewarding happens, you get a bit of dopamine. If something scary happens, you get a bit of dopamine. People thought of dopamine as a reward drug. In fact, it turns out it's a salience drug. It's about figuring out what's distinct and picking out things distinct from the background. Your brain is firing a little bit of dopamine to help you tell what's part of one object and where the boundary is to the next object. When you start blurring with a lot of dopamine, some of us are starting to wonder, is the reason you end up with psychosis is because your brain can't tell what's important and not important anymore. So in our brain, our dopamine is being flooded by methamphetamine because one, the vesicles filled with the dopamine are being urged to go to the surface and burst open and release all their dopamine. The other thing it's doing though is what normally would happen is that dopamine would be pumped back in, put back in the little vesicles and ready for your next firing, that where your brain had to send a message that there was a distinction of importance. Those pumps start working in reverse. Rather than pumping it back in and preparing the system, it just takes any free dopamine and pumps it back in. So even more dopamine's there. The next thing that happens is that normally your brain is clearing up any excess dopamine that's around, and that's not happening properly either. And then finally, a new thing that they've discovered is that in our brain, we have an immune system, just like everywhere else in our body, which includes some cells that are kind of like the garbage collectors. Those cells are being affected in such a way that we stop doing some of that and we actually cause more oxidative stress. People talk about these things, you take an antioxidant. It's kind of like these are things to help free radical oxygen things that cause more damage. We're not getting rid of them, and in fact, we're increasing them. So this is why people are concerned about methamphetamine, and that we see when we look at people's brains who have used a lot of methamphetamine, that it can cause some damage that's perceptible in our brains if people have used a lot for a long time. Again, the good news is our brains are plastic. They repair, just like you can break a bone, it repairs. A broken bone, you break it too many times, it might be kind of bent and crooked when it repairs. Similarly with your brain, it'll repair to a point. At some point, it may still be more fragile.